Hey everybody, welcome to Off the Lot. I'm Ken Kabatop.
And I'm Anthony Epp. And we are here to take a deep dive into the world of independent filmmaking and really get into the nuts and bolts of how to make movies on your terms and in your own way.
With the Hollywood landscape changing so quickly, now is the time to become your own gatekeeper. And with this podcast, we'll explore exactly what that looks like. So be sure to like, follow, or subscribe. And if you like something you hear, share it with your friends. It really helps us out. So let's dive in. Anthony, thankfully you have a day off from production and you're still in the middle of this vertical shoot, but I'm curious, along with everybody else, how is it going?
It's going very well. It's definitely, as I said last week, drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot of moving pieces. You are mixing, as a production manager on these, you are diving between being a cast driver to being a key PA to being the production manager, and once in a while you actually get to sit down and eat lunch. Like I've been just spending my time doing a whirlwind of stuff. But on the first day, we got a chance to play with horses. We were over at the Jamestown set where they
Oh,
film
great.
When Calls the Heart. So we had some horses to ride, and that was kind of our show for the day, which was fantastic. It was kind of fun to play out there for a bit, and then we've been at this really amazing looking estate in Richmond for the last few days, and that's where we're going to be for the next 4 after today.
Wow. Okay, cool. So horses, stunts, the whole
Horses,
deal?
guns, stunts, all of it. Yeah, we're doing it's amazing how much we try to fit in. It's like a short. It's a soap opera with. I would say it's like a soap opera for mature audiences.
Okay.
We've got lots of sex in it too.
Wow. Okay. So, and intimacy coordinators and all this stuff.
Intimacy coordinators. Yeah.
Is it a Western or is it just,
No.
there just happens to be horses?
It's like Downton Abbey, but it's in some kind of modern day American area somehow. So it's a lot of affluent people.
Right. And how many episodes total is this one?
51.
51. And right now, what are you averaging? Like 8 per day or something like that? Or how does that work?
It depends on the episode, because some episodes are like one setup or one scene and then they're done, and then others are a little bit more intricate. But I would say I wouldn't say we've, as they say I wouldn't say we've credited more than maybe half of it so far, because we're kind of in the middle of a bunch of different episodes at the same time. So I really give credit to a script supervisor who has to keep track of everything, because they are tracking everything that's happening over 50 episodes and doing it at breakneck speed. So
Yeah.
it's this is one of those things. I don't think when they first sort of envisioned these verticals that they thought about the importance of script supervisors, but I think script supervisors are like almost the key ingredient, the key crew member that you absolutely can't do without on something like this if you want it to be good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, script supervisors, also for anybody that's like unfamiliar with that position, they basically keep track of everything to do with the script on set in terms of continuity, tracking the story, making sure the actors know their lines. If the actor, say, flubs a line, they're going to be the one that calls it out. They're working with the director to make sure that all the coverage is being achieved that they need to actually cut the scene together. So script supervisors often talk with editors as well in a traditional sense. It's an incredibly difficult job, and so stressful all the time. They're timing the scene as it's happening to make sure that it, works out with the timing that they had in pre-production. Because especially when you're dealing with like network TV, if a scene's running too long, that could be bad for the edit, and then that could cost production issues later. I'm assuming for this there aren't really any time restrictions, but there are so many factors that go into the script supervisor's job. So yeah, and then on top of that, I guess in your situation, you have to track like 50 something episodes. Are you block shooting those episodes as well, or is it?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's the thing. You're treating it almost like a feature film where you're shooting out location by location by location. You're not trying to shoot an episode, then go back and go back and go back. So we've shot the beginning, the ending, and lots of points in between already. So.
Yeah, so why don't we get into the main, topic of today's episode, which is very exciting. So up until now, we've been chatting with directors and writers about the indie filmmaking process. But this week, we're going to change things up and talk to a department head who's the expert of their craft. And one of the most important departments when it comes to indie filmmaking is wardrobe. Because besides dialogue, wardrobe is the most efficient way to establish your character for the audience. And if you don't have a knowledgeable costume designer on your team, you could be spending way more money than you should be.
This week's guest is Mandi Line, a powerhouse costume designer who's left her mark across music videos, television, and film. Best known for styling iconic TV series like Pretty Little Liars, Greek, and Travelers, Mandi has also brought her creative touch to the world of rock, working with bands like Linkin Park, Korn, and System of a Down. Her ability to shape character through wardrobe has made her a sought-after name in the industry, from edgy teen dramas to high-profile music videos.
Currently, she's bringing fresh energy to the young and the restless, redefining style in the fast-paced world of soap operas. But at her core, Mandi's all about storytelling through fashion, whether it's in indie films, major TV shows, or pushing creative boundaries on tight budgets.
Today, we're diving into her incredible journey, how she broke into the business, the lessons she's learned from independent filmmaking, and what it takes to build a career in costume design. So let's get into it.
So, Mandi Line, thank you so much for joining us today. Legendary costume designer, or wardrobe designer, as we were just talking about.
Don't even get me started, Ken. You're lucky you're one of my best friends. You know what? Ken knows, just call me pretty and we're good. I just call me pretty and we're
exactly.
We're
I always do. Yeah. Well, look, Mandi, thanks for joining us. We're super stoked to talk to you today. We've known each other for a long time, but your resume is unbelievable. You worked on huge TV shows. You worked on music videos with Linkin Park and System of a Down, right? Some amazing talent. And then big TV shows, little TV shows, like where we met on Travelers. Or no, we actually met on the Arrangement pilot. That's right.
Oh my gosh, that's right. It's so funny. In my head, it's just Travelers, but you're right. The Arrangement pilot.
The Arrangement. Yeah. And then you've done a whole bunch of other things since then, including indie features, which is what this podcast is about, right? So we want to dive into all of that stuff. But most people probably know you from like Pretty Little Liars and the fashion line that you've also created with that.
Oh, thank you.
But currently, you are making soap operas cool as the costume designer for The Young and the Restless, which is really cool.
Well, first of all, thank you for that, intro. It's funny because who would have thought the stylist. So that's another thing too. When you dress bands in red carpet, that's called stylist. Who would have thought the stylist for Korn and System of a Down, Linkin Park would now be the costume designer for Young and the Restless, which, by the way, I recently found out that Canadians love Young and the Restless. I didn't know this, but it's huge out there.
It's huge in my family. I mean, my parents watch it every single day. Family friends watch it every single day. My grandma, until the day she died, would park herself in front of the TV and watch Young and the Restless. Her stories, as she called it. Yeah.
Stop it. I love it. What's very interesting is in my career, I've been blessed. I never say lucky because when you work hard, that's when your sustainability and your longevity, hopefully goes on. So I have had a 27-year career and I worked pretty steady. And then all of a sudden, you have the pandemic, you have the strike. I got called for 2 indie movies. And I'm just like, what is this world? But the scripts are huge and the cast is huge. So I went and did the 2 indie movies. Your crew is an 1/8 of what they used to be. Your rate is an 1/8 of what they used to be. But they were so amazing. So I come back to the States and I'm just laying in my bed. And I was like, I don't know if I can travel anymore. This is getting too hard on my body. 2 days later, I get a call from a producer saying, we got your name from about 5 people. Have you ever thought of working on a soap opera? I was like, what? A soap? Well, this is crazy. So after about 4 weeks of negotiations, it is one of the most craziest, fast-paced, amazing places I've ever been because I get to be me. I get to do me. But at the same time, we do up to 90 pages a day. We air 5 days a week. 5 days a week. So if you think about episodic TV, right? We're killing it for 1 episode a week. We do 5. So that's where I'm at right now after a dive back into indies, which that's my heart and soul. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, I got to pay rent. What's going on here? But the fulfillment of those indies, I think that gratitude brought me to one of the best jobs of my life.
Yeah, I just want to unpack that for a second because 90 pages a day, you've explained this to me before and I still don't understand how that's possible.
I still don't get it. I have no idea. It truly, you know what it is? I'm starting to realize. I ran into this woman at the nail salon and she recognized me because, oh my God, you're that soap designer. And she said, I used to work on soaps. She was an actress on soaps called Passions back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And but now she is an executive at Stars. So one of her shows is Outlander. And she was talking about how crazy the prep is in Outlander. But when she was on soaps, being in the moment, with, like you said, 90 pages a day, 5 different sets, how it works, how it is able to work is it's contained. There's no locations. These actors have been on for 1,000 years, minimum 5, literally like minimum 5. You literally hear them. When they wrap, they go home and they're working on every single day off. I've never seen a team of actors not complain, know their lines. And here's what I always say. If you don't know your lines, they can replace you with a face transplant tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's like, you got to
Yes.
be awesome. So I think it's a well-oiled machine that's truly been going on for over 50 years. Some weeks you get your butt kicked, and other weeks it's, not that if you watch a soap, but when you get that break is sometimes days last for, like, one day will last for 2 weeks watching it. So that gives everybody.
Right, like they're talking in the coffee shop for 5 episodes straight, and it's like one
That's
long
it.
conversation or whatever.
That's it. Well, one of the actors says, I go, this is insane. Like, you guys, well, you have so much dialogue. And they said, well, what we like to say is one director has a conversation, and then they like to have the conversation again with another director. And then when the next director comes in, they want to say the same conversation in a different way. It's so nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
Wow.
totally a foreign world to me. Soaps.
I don't
but
think I did a good job explaining it, but you have to be in it to understand. It's almost like you got to watch Soap Dish to even understand a bit of it. They told me to watch it before I had, but it really is this wild world of its own.
And it sounds like that's a really good training ground for a lot of those actors too, because if they, the ones that do get out of the, stop doing soaps at some point and get into features, seem to just have that professionalism down pat.
Well, Brad Pitt, Demi Moore, Justin Hartley. Justin
Right.
Hartley was the transplant face on our show. Some guy got kicked off the show and he was like, hello, I'm back. And a little fun fact, Francis Ford Coppola and his mother and an intern spent over a month at Young and the Restless to train, to understand how to shoot the way they shoot. Martin Scorsese has also brought people there, and Francis Ford Coppola would sit in on the production meetings before his wine line got really big. Everyone felt so special. They're like, oh, everyone on the crew got a bottle of wine. I'm like, yeah, now they sell it for $5 at CVS. But that was a really fun fact, like you said, training ground. And who would have known that Francis Ford Coppola spent a month and a half at Young and the Restless?
So this is where you are now. Let's go all the way back. How did you get into costumes in the first place? Like, did you always want to work in film? What was the spark there, and how did you break in?
Okay, this is PG. Let's do this in the PG. I always say I dated the right person. Well, it's a funny kind of thing to get back to that. That's not how I got the job. But so I modeled for a while, went to fashion school. I realized I felt like eating in my life, stopped modeling. But when I was in fashion school, what gravitated to me was, I was in front of the camera. Now I'm behind I wasn't yet behind the camera, but creating what could be behind the camera. Now, keep in mind, in fashion school, oh my God, almost 30 years ago, we didn't have all this reality TV and Instagram and Facebook that shows everybody, oh, I can be a stylist, I can be a costume designer because I dress well. Back then, no one even knew that existed. When I graduated fashion school, I thought I was going to be a buyer. I was like, I'm going to buy really cool clothes for stores. Well, at the very bottom of the internship, which, by the way, internship when I was growing up was free. I was talking to a girl at the nail salon yesterday. She's like, oh, I interned for Good American. I was like, do you get paid? She's like, oh, yeah. I was like, okay, this is insane. So, just to touch on like what we had to do to get in the business back then.
Yeah.
Those damn labor laws. So at the very bottom of this job placement program at my school was interning on a movie. And I was like, I don't even know what this means. I happened to be dating a director at the time. Well, wannabe director, student, getting into the college and directing. And he goes, oh my God, you should totally do that. Met this woman, Julia Schler, who was still an amazing costume designer. She said, meet me downtown, 6 a.m. I live an hour and a half away. Literally 2 days later, I had never stepped on a film set before. I walk in, it feels like guerrilla filmmaking. It was disgusting. There were rats. I mean, we were working out of a hotel room at the Barclay Hotel. And she looked at me and she said, this is post-apocalyptic film noir. Had no idea what those two things meant. I'm 20 years old. I just want to go and party with Ben Affleck. I don't even know what you're talking about. So she said, I need them to look like this. Here's 200 background. Here's how to do a double Windsor. But like, she just downloaded information. I didn't ask a question. I didn't complain. I didn't ask where to put my shit. I had no idea what I was doing. I just listened and watched her. An hour and a half later, she came up to me with tears in her eyes and she said, please don't ever leave me. I know what that feeling is like when you meet someone who just gets it. So from that point on, I mean, I was living at her house. The gas money was so, I had to drive an hour and a half for work. But we together, Julie and I, co-designed almost, God, like 25 films. I worked with Larry Clark. It was a bunch of horror films, Mimic 2, Children of the Corn 2, The Crow, 70,000. But, I'm going to give you a break to talk. But what it was is I met this costume designer who took me in, and Dimension had a horror sequel kind of department that was non-union. And we just went from job to job to job. And there were like 2 to 3 people on the crew, and we couldn't have been happier. That was my true beginning. But to get back to dating the right person, how I solely broke in was after I kind of flew the coop from Julia. About 2 years into that, I get a call from an ex-boyfriend. And he said, I think you're in costume design or, styling, whatever he called it. And he said, I have a friend of a friend who's performing tonight and they need someone to dress them. And I'm like, I don't dressing a band. Okay, whatever. He said, meet me at the Whiskey. You'll see on the outside, their name is Korn. And I really want you to meet the singer. And I remember saying, oh, nice name. They're going to be huge. So technically, for me breaking into what I did, like, got my name out there, was an ex-boyfriend called me and I met Korn and then Linkin Park. So technically, I did date the right person to get into that little niche.
Wow. So okay. A lot to unpack there. So these movies that you did, so many movies, but like low budget, down and dirty, run and gun films, basically, right? Like not a lot of money for the So you had to learn a lot and like interesting ways to pull all this stuff off, right?
Oh, it was where I learned everything. And like Don Draper from Mad Men, there was an episode where these two guys come in and he said, have you ever been fired before? And they're like, no, never. He's like, get the hell out of my office. If someone comes to me and they've never done a student film or never done a low budget, to me, they're never going to know what it's like. We always say to pull things out of your ass. They're like, we need an Elvis costume. I'm like, but I'm in the middle of Vancouver. What are you talking about? It's snowing. We're in the mountains. You figure out a way to make it work with nothing, whether you're using your own shit, whether you got something in the car, whether, oh my God, I did have a Target bag I didn't return. I think there's a pair of pants in there that can work. So the mindset of not having the money, not having the resources, and having to be ultra creative, I can't take someone on and teach them all that. Like I need to have them have done some sort of work like that really gives them the roots to who they can be.
Yeah. And so then getting out of movies and into bands and styling bands, how did that transition work? I mean, after you established yourself with Korn, which is cool.
Yeah.
How long were you in that world for?
Well, it's so funny because working with a lot of, his name is Nathan. He goes by Nathan Karma Cox. He's literally he's literally directed every single early 2000 band, which is now coming back in. That's a whole other crazy moment. I'm like, I'm cool again. Truly, there were four of us. There was the girl that did all the hip hop. There was a girl that did all the pop. There was a girl that did all the rockers. That was me. So it was the most insane fun time of my life. So you have these record labels, right? You have Warner Brothers, Roadrunner. Oh my God. I can't believe I just remembered that. They had all the hard bands. There was no Instagram, there was no Facebook. It was word of mouth. And I had big dreads back then. So they would say, like, I dressed this band 3 Days Grace. Oh, you know what it was? A lot of band managers manage like 5 bands at a time. So they would say, you would wrap a video and they would say, great, we have a 7 Dust video coming up next week. Are you available? So it became this, I mean, touring with Three Doors Down. Like, I remember they would just call and say, hey, are you that girl with the dreads? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, Three Doors Down has a NASCAR performance, a presidential thing, a 4th of July thing. It's within 2 weeks. I mean, it was like $3,000 cash a day. They would give me assist. I mean, this is when there were $1 million videos, like Disturbed. We did $3 million videos back to back. So it's funny. Some people ask me, they're like, how did you fulfill your dreams and your goals? And I never had that list. I never had that checklist. I knew what I was good at. And so when I got into videos, it was, hey, are you available? Are you available? We like this girl. The world was so small when it came to that new metal is what they call it. And so it was really cool because it was truly Jared Leto saw me at a club. He's like, oh, dude, you're that chick. Now, don't call me chick. But back then I was like, yes, I am that chick. You're that chick that does the videos. He goes, we need a look. We don't have a look. And I literally created all the albums, all their press packages, all their look for their first album. And it was, nobody looked for anyone bigger and better. You were just the dopest at the time. No one went, well, maybe I can get the girl from The Matrix. Maybe I can get the girl from Who Did Wednesday. They're like, no, you're it. You're going to do all of our stuff. And it was just this really tight knit world. It wasn't so big and it was so intimate. So I just kept on getting those jobs for at least 3 to 4 years, just doing bands, concerts. It was nonstop. I don't know where that money went, but no, it was all cash.
But that's great. And then you found yourself going back into film or TV at that point.
So it was, you're right. It was film. Then it was music videos. Then I could not find a job to save my life because what happened is all the money for music videos went away. So, and then hip hop came in. So they were just like, you're too crazy. Getting into television. I remember I interviewed to be an assistant for the guys that did Saved by the Bell. And I was too edgy. I mean, my book back in the day was a big, huge portfolio that you carry around. And you would go in and I would just go to Kinko's and print off a picture of, Chester Benningfield. Like it was, your book wasn't digital. It wasn't like you couldn't just look online. And so I would have interviews with ABC Family, Saturday morning, young, like that Saved by the Bell world. And I got turned down over and over because my work was too edgy. This is a really cool story. So I was working set because I couldn't find design jobs anymore. So I was working set for a woman that I worked with on Two Guys and a Girl in a Pizza Place. That's a whole other story. I worked with her on The Nanny. That's a whole other story.
Oh, wow.
I interned on The Nanny, but that's a whole thing. But, you do so many jobs in between just to make, life work. But I was working on this TV show as a set girl, and my ego in my head was just like, I'm a designer. What am I doing set? But I sucked it up. Anyways, this actor was so rude to me. I went to the designer and I said, I got to get out of here. I said, I'm not okay with this. And she goes, I get it. He's a dick. The next day I was at the dentist and I see this guy and he said, aren't you the set girl from In Case of Emergency? And I said, I am. He said, this is great. No, I said, I am, but not anymore. And I told him the whole story. And he goes, oh my God, this is great. There's this TV show for ABC Family. And the designer, I think, needs help making it cooler. We're about to shoot the pilot. He goes, let me give my producer your number. I went to her house and I walked in and she had 2 teenage sons. And I was showing her my book and I said, I can help the designer, maybe edge up the show. It was a college kids TV show. It was called Greek. I didn't know anything about it. I never went to a 4-year school like that. I went to fashion school. And she was very quiet and her kids were looking at the book too. I leave. I was like, okay, that was a weird meeting. Cut to that night. She calls me and she said, I don't want the show to be normal. I don't want it to be what kids look like in college. I want to inspire the kids that look like in college. My son said that you are the coolest person they've like ever seen and that I should hire you. And she said, we don't want you to assist. I wasn't really getting what she was, getting at. She goes, we want you to design this TV show. So my first break into TV was the TV show Greek on ABC Family, aka Freeform, but it came from a woman seeing more in me than what all the other networks thought was too much. And she said, no, we need someone like this to push the boundaries and to inspire people to dress different in college. And so that was another, that's what they say in careers. You always have breakthrough moments where you kind of have to reinvent yourself, or that someone sees, like Brad Wright, someone sees, no, I don't want average, So that was my kind of bigger break into TV. Sorry, that was long, but the story was
that's
linear.
fantastic.
So all of these things that you've worked on and the lessons that you learned from starting with your low budget films, how does the low budget side of things still affect you day to day today, right? Like, because
oh my God,
even before you did Young and the Restless, you've actually done a few indies in the last couple of years, right?
I really think these last couple of years have been so intentional, from universe, God, whatever, wardrobe gods. I truly think that this reset how I work and brought me back to my roots in the independent world. A lot of designers are saying this is, we came from the hard knocks, we get the fancy shows, then all of a sudden it's dry and there's no work, and there's a younger generation coming up. Damn them. I want to kick them. I was kidding. And you have to make yourself relevant again. And what's really funny, Ken, is when I got called to do those 2 indies with great scripts, Jake Lacey, Justin Long, Ashley Benson, Ron Perlman, that was truly last year, like in June. It was so crazy. The inside of me, that my brain, I had to come up with shit that I thought I got a little lazy at like on Death and Other Details. We had so much money. It's not that it ever gets easy, but the creativity and the shit that I had to pull out of my ass on that show to make it work. Cut to Young and the Restless just last week. Nikki comes down and it's a dress that we fit on her before. And I look on the monitor, I was like, holy shit. She was a little too cleavagey. We have to be careful. And it was a little too exposed here, right? My brain, which I don't think would have been so quick at doing I know I'm creative, but because of those 2 films that I got back into, my mind went into this like Project Runway moment. And I looked on my chair. I'm not freaking kidding you. Now, keep in mind, we're holding up camera, okay? I looked on my chair. I had come in like this robe. I was so cold the other day. It was this long black strip. And the crew looks at me. And my assistant I've worked with for years, Nikki, looks at me and she goes, "Ugh, man, he's going to pull off some magic right now." I go to set in front of everybody. This is the entire crew waiting. I take that strip that was a waist robe, like a thin, you wrap around and I draped it here. I tied it like a tie knot. We stitched it really quick on hand. I think it took 7 minutes. But I truly think those that haven't done low budget, independent videos out of the back of their car, your mind doesn't go, I had to sit for a second. I'm like, what? I can't change the dress. I can't make the dress tighter. What can I do to fill that space? You know what I mean? I had to fill the space. What the F would have filled that space? And the stage manager, he was like, what did you just do? I was like, don't even ask. And it truly comes from having to think on your feet, doing indies. And I think the transition in my life of, the wardrobe gods were like, here's your fancy job here. We're going to give you 2 old school independents to have you kick ass even more here. I truly think it was like this getting back into, the way things were.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. And so when you get a script, I mean, maybe the soap isn't the best example, but let's say one of the movies that you
Yeah.
just did. What is your process when you get the script and you sit down for the first time? And we've talked so many times about jobs that you haven't gotten, right? Because you're always pitching, just like as a writer. We have an idea, or if we're trying to pitch on an open writing assignment, we'll pitch our take, and you may not get the job, some other writer will. Same thing for costume designers when producers are hiring, right? So when you get a script for the first time, what's your process?
Ken can speak to this because I just like to tell everybody what I want and deal with it. No. So no. It's like, here's how I see it. Good luck. No, so it all works the same way. You look at the episode or the feature and I should say me personally, in my mind, I can start to envision, but on a film, we have a little more time. So I get to create boards and, more of a lookbook, but it's as we're reading, I am so, and like you guys can speak to it, we read a script in such a different way now that we're going, okay, she's going to be cold. We're going to have a breakaway shirt. We're going to have to get wet. We need doubles. We need multiples. So it's almost like when you go and watch a movie when you're first in the business, you get to relax and watch it. And now when we watch it, our brains are like, how did they do that? Where was that light? How did they run in that shoe? And it's like you watch it from all this costume trauma in your mind. So you're constantly going, how can I make this stripper outfit work when I know she's going to have a dance double, but I've only got $100 to make this, so I'm reading it. Is it like very analytically, very logically first? And then I read it creatively. And then I put together, scenarios of like, this is what I would love. This is ideal, but this is what we can do budget wise. Then we meet with the director. Hopefully there's not too many cooks in the kitchen. It's just like insane. You meet with the director, talk creatively. And then when the director's visions are a little too big for what we're able to do, then you talk to the producer and you find hopefully a happy middle. And then you talk to the actor and then they throw that all away. And they're like, oh, but I was thinking I was a
Yeah.
cowboy. I'm just like, oh my God. So it's truly a logical process, a creative process, and then a collaborative process. And a lot of designers make the mistake where it's my way or no way. And that collaboration has to happen because by the time an actor is going to get on set, there's this weird, everyone wants to see what they thought they envisioned. And it's my job to get what I want and make everyone else think that they were also heard at the same time.
What do you think is a good tactic for those sort of low budget productions to get the most value out of out of costumes? Because like you said, we're trying to make we're trying to make a dollar look like it
Uh,
was $1,000.
it's so nuts. I mean, I hadn't done them in 20 years. And when I revisited this one, the one I just did in Jersey with Ashley Benson, I have to be honest, one of the things that I learned too is how to make it work is to make them, and you're an AD. I would have to tell the AD with this Anna Nicole Smith movie with Holly Hunter. I never thought that I got to call the shots when it came to how many takes they had. I was able to tell the AD, and to answer your question is to say how to make it work, is that it's not just the creative point, but you have to tell the AD, you got 2 takes. That is it. We've got one hero and one backup. And when you've got money, you don't get to say that, they go, well, we need this, we need 5, we need him, we need the stunt double, we need this.
Yeah.
So when you only have 2 takes, number one, it almost gets to it. For me, it helps me. Everyone's like, oh my God, late casting so crazy. And I always say, you guys, with late casting, you get to say, this works, let's roll. Like there's not so many opinions. And I think a lot of people get scared, and maybe it's an experience thing, but how I make it work with no money and no time is that I almost get to say more and have more last you know, call in all of it is like, everyone can have this creative vision, but at the end of the day, you want to shoot this tomorrow. It's now black and white. You recast the actor who's now 5 times bigger with a different shoe size. I have this. You shoot
Right.
tomorrow, you don't. Of course, I say it in a nicer way, but I don't mind that craziness because it almost makes me have to do less options, and I hate options.
Yeah, that seems to be like a common denominator with indies, right? Is that you don't have the money, so you have fewer options. So as a
Hmm.
department head, you tell the director, okay, you have one option. You can do this
Yeah.
or not at all. And the director has to make a choice at that point. And that also just goes back to what we're constantly talking about, which is in order to be able to make that choice and make it the best choice, the script has to be in really good shape, right? So that
Yes.
things aren't always in
Yes.
flux. The big difference here is with a big budget film, you have money to but get 5 different options of this thing, have it all ready on the day, and you don't really have to make a decision. You can shoot all different versions and decide later in post-production. But with an indie,
Right.
you're making all of these decisions ahead of time, which I think is way better, right? Because then that what that does is it creates vision from the director
Right.
and
And it
from all of the other
rains.
departments.
I was just real quick. I went to see Ridley Scott speak the other day, and you have a bunch of independent filmmakers and experienced filmmakers in the audience. And he was like, "Well, I have 8 cameras at once," and blah, and everyone's like, "Yeah, it's easy when you have that." Every single person in the
Was
audience was, as much as we respected him, we were frustrated at the same time. Like, I'm listening, but how am I learning from this? We don't have eight
right.
cameras at once. So, anyways, go
But
ahead.
you can also tell now that Ridley Scott is an incredibly lazy filmmaker today because he has
Right. Yeah.
eight
Good
he has
point.
no but he has 8 cameras and he doesn't even worry about framing out the shot because he'll
Nope.
just visual effect out the camera operator that's in the frame.
Yes, that's what he said. He goes, if I catch a camera operator, I'll just take him out. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Well, but that's also there's that laziness, but then that's also like when you have the tools, like you're saying, like if you have $100 million, you can have 20 options. You can have the
Yeah.
20 of the same shirt. So we can do 20 takes of the guy jumping in the ocean if we want to, because we have a dry shirt standing by. Whereas when you only have the one option of you have your one shirt, and you basically, it's like we don't have to, it's that one shirt, and it'll take us 2 hours to dry it. That's it,
Right. It'll
and
take us
and
2 hours
and
to dry it. Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and it's that whole thing of like of your limitations create your canvas that you can play on. What so like speaking of like directors and stuff, like, so I mean, in your ideal situation, if you go to a low budget film or an indie film or something like that with a limited budget, like what do you want from the director when you first have that initial conversation with them? What helps you do your job best?
The good thing is now where I'm at in my career, not that, financially it's been great with this strike. Who has a cat? Because I'm dying. I'm
I d-
so
I
happy.
I
Oh my God.
I have 2.
Oh my
They're both very
God.
curious. I
I
usually lock
love
them out, but
that.
they've decided that they wanted to be in here today.
Because they know there's a cat person here. They're like, Dad, who's that
Yeah.
lady?
This one's Maui. We'll edit this out. This is Maui. He's
Right.
decided that he's working with me today, and then his sister is meowing because I'm talking, but she
Yeah.
doesn't know who
I
I'm
don't you
talking
you
to.
don't know this, Ken, but humans aren't allowed to talk to other humans if cats are in the room. We're being rude if we talk to someone else, just so you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Okay.
um, so anyways, what I'm looking for in a director. The good thing at this point in my career is that my life is too short. My life is too short. I don't have time to struggle. I don't have time to fight. And I really choose the project where I already know from that meeting that the director and I have a similar way of working and getting to that end point, and that he understands that it can't be his way or no way. Because at the beginning, you say yes to everything, and sometimes you're fighting the whole time. I don't have time to fight. Like, I don't have time
Yeah.
to. It's not that I. And back to your point where it's like, hey, we have one shirt. This is what we have to go with. A good designer makes sure that that one shirt has components of everything. Like, say, Ken's directing, everything that Ken has said that he wanted. I have tried to hit it the best as I can with that one shirt. I say, Ken, you wanted this collar that flips up. It's blah, blah, blah. The only thing different than what we were looking for is it doesn't have a lot of drape, but it's still flattering at the same time. But, so the thought process it's not neglected to the director's needs. And then the director sees that I've worked so hard for that one top that his views and wants are not dismissed. The easiest way to get the door closed on you is if you don't listen to the things that they have said in the meetings previously. If I showed up and Baxter needs a sweater, but Ken had said very quickly he wants it to show how cold she is and how how much angst she's carrying, and I come in with a pink sweater. Ken's like, dude, I told you she's sad and she hates everything, and I'm like, but it's a sweater and it's cheap. It's really important that you can really digest what that director's saying, and vice versa, because he's going to be easier on she is going to be easier when you're trying to approve something.
Well, and that's the thing with the costume, because, for example, as a director, I can sit there and say, I want it to be a leather jacket, but a leather jacket means 20 different things, right? Like a leather jacket not all leather jackets are made equal, right? And it's that language of, but as a director, I might not know that what I'm trying to say. Like I often say when I'm talking to a composer, I'm like, no, it needs to be more or less violin. And the composer says, so no violin? And I'm like, no, less violin, but I don't know. Maybe it's not the violin, maybe it's something else, and it's sort of interpret the vision.
Thank you.
And
Thank
then
you for
put it
saying
into
that.
practical terms.
Like, no, you're so right. And it happens with writers more often. Is I'll have like my team come up to me and say, oh my God, but it says it has to be a prom dress. And I always look at my team, I'm like, don't look at the writing, don't read the writing. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, oh, he doesn't mean this. He just means fancy. He put the word prom dress because he meant elegant. And they're like, no, but it says a prom dress. I'm like, no, it just means an evening dress. And so working with that director or writer, you really start to understand what they mean. It's like dating. It's literally, they're like, hey, I want to take you out, but I didn't book the place. And you're like, okay, so he did the one thing for me. Let me help him do this. It truly is filling in the gaps and not taking it so literal in what they say. And I love that. I love when it says, she walks in her, long blue dress. And I was like, actually, he just wants blue. It could be a suit. He just wants her to stand out.
The moment or the emotion is this. It's not like the director might have said, I want a blue dress, but really what they wanted is the emotion that comes from her entering the room, and the costume should be supporting that.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, I was just going through this on a pilot that I'm writing, and I don't know anything about clothes. Like, Mandy, you know me. I can hardly dress myself. But the only time I really ever specify what they're wearing is if it's like, it's actually really to like make the script a little easier to digest for an executive and not so much the crew, because executives or producers sometimes will just scan through it. And I'm like, I need you to know that this is like a fancy gala. So I'll be like, they're wearing... He's in a tuxedo, but I'm never gonna like choose the brand, the brand or the make of it, because like I don't know.
You say tuxedo, I say dope shirt with no tie, like Clooney and Pitt. They don't wear bow ties anymore. They wear dope double-breasted. So I know what that means.
You know what I'm going for.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's such a good point to bring up. I think a lot of people, with less experience or less conversations with directors and writers, or I'll come to the writer and be like, dude, really? And they're like, no, I didn't mean that. I meant like, she feels good about that moment. I'm like, go, also it translates into people's bodies, is that sometimes they are specific with a blue strapless dress. And I have to let them know, I get the vision. What we need to do to make this actor feel comfortable is we're going to do a sash over the shoulder. She can, so there's also that is, interpreting for who they cast.
Well, that's a really good point, because it's how the actor, if like the tuxedo, like I want this person to walk in like James Bond. Well, that's a very different thing than saying I want that person to walk in like they're a nerd at the prom.
Totally.
They're both wearing a tuxedo, right? Like, how does that translate to their wardrobe?
Who they are. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the other thing about, character and wardrobe, is that outside of dialogue and the script itself and the story, the most efficient way to establish who a character is through their wardrobe. not through set deck, props, or production design. The next most important aspect of a character is what they're wearing on screen, because that's the first thing we see, right? And that can
Thank you.
do so much heavy lifting for who a person is.
The last one I did with Ashley Benson, and I was trying to tell my one intern, I said, we've got 13 seconds to tell a story. Yeah, but you can get to see this outfit later. I'm like, we have to introduce her as a trailer mom. She loves her kid. She hates her husband. She has to strip for a living. She doesn't have a friggin' dime. She's been wearing the same jeans the last 20 years because her kid comes first. I'm not, this whole story. So the locket was her femininity from her mother. The old beat down Carhartt jacket is because she was a farmer. The jeans were dated because her kid came first. The red boots reminded us, oh, she's still a stripper and funky. You know, that truly was the first time we saw Ashley Benson. How do I tell the story? How do I tell her backstory and where she's at now in 13 seconds? And thank you for pointing that out, because I think some people forget that. They're just like, oh, it's just a jacket. I'm like, yeah, but that Carhartt jacket said warmth, said job, said this is how she was raised, and she doesn't spend money on fat. You know, it's so important.
Well, clothes, I mean, even just in general in life, like clothes tell us so much about who we are. Like even that decision not to make a decision about what you're going to wear that day is a decision. Like you making that decision to say, I don't care how I look today is saying, I don't care how I look. Even even like the Steve Jobs thing where he had, 3 black shirts and
Yeah.
and 3 pairs of jeans, and that's what he did. Well, that's a choice,
Totally.
right? Like
Totally.
he made that choice about his wardrobe because for him, that's a person who doesn't care, doesn't want to be bothered with making decisions about his wardrobe. Well, that's a character choice, and that's a wardrobe choice, and
It does. It does a lot.
conversation that we're having together when we want to say that, okay, well, if I want to make that kind of a character that doesn't want to make decisions about things that don't matter to them in their eyes,
Yep.
you've got to speak to that in that moment.
Well, Luther is a TV show. I always talk about how it was one of the first shows that I saw that was just a normal, everyday show, that a jacket made such an impact, that it was such an impact that they literally created a scene for him to lose his jacket. I think he ends up getting it back,
Right.
which made no sense, but it was one of the first. And same thing working with Brad Wright and Ken on Travelers, was these characters are completing missions. They are having stunts. Everything is so technological based that why would they look cool? But to bring these characters to life and to bring in a new audience, it had to have a flair to it. It was within who they were. Each of them was so specific. And even on Young and the Restless, it was so cool. One of the directors said, oh my God, they're characters now. And in my head, I'm like, but that comes from my low budget indies. Without characters, you can't get away with dressing people for $25. You have to have your closets of limitations so that they don't look alike.
So tactically, then, when you're talking about like these low budget, like what are like your go-to cost effective, versatility tricks that you bring when you're talking about that low budget level where your budget's going to be a tenth of what it probably should be.
Well, here's the thing. It's really bad what people are doing now. It sucks. People are just using Amazon. This is why retail is dying. I mean, I could be honest. Yeah, it's pretty ugly. Back in the day when we needed to get the biggest bang for our buck, we would go to Western Costume. I would say to Eddie Marks, RIP, I would say, I got $1,000. And he would say, you got 2 racks, fill it up, squish it, fill, you know what I mean? He would give me, such a deal, but because it was like this passion project, thrift is always the best way, but you own it. So say you have $100 to change, okay? I wanted to go to a thrift store and get a used cowboy boot for Ashley Benson, right? Of course I wanted to do that, but that's $60. You cannot return it. And if it doesn't fit because it's vintage, which is really old, I just lost $60. But back in the day, he would my first boyfriend back in the day, we went to go see the screening and he was like, is that my jacket? I was like, yeah, you were sleeping. I would steal his clothes on the way into work. And so doing this low budget recently, I wanted to use vintage. I wanted to use thrift, but we had 167 changes for $9,000. But I did throughout the show. I always told the producer, Mom, we're never going to hit this. If you want to shoot these guys and have triples of everything, that's what triples of everything. We ended up getting it up to like 20,000, but that's still unheard of. And in the most amazing way. But unfortunately, where we are now, I don't have to go to the thrift store in Burbank. I don't have to go to the rental house. And this is just for this specific movie. It wasn't period. It was contemporary. It was strippers, white trash, hunters, rednecks. You know what I mean? I didn't have to pull in period things. So what I wanted to do was like go to retail and then age it and wash it and make it feel used. But guess what? I'm one body in a hotel room in Jersey. I hate to say this, almost 90% of the movie was from Amazon. But here's the thing, what's happening with Amazon now is I tested it out. I went to the mall. I took a picture of that name brand. I went on Amazon and they have it. So it's not that I'm using these Shein companies that are fast fashion. I'm actually using companies that are in these stores online. And it sucks because retail, I mean, we're all to blame for retail dying. It's not just me. It's not just costume designers. They don't want us to say this, but this is what's happening in the world is if you don't give me money and you don't give me the resources, I'm going to do it online, whether it's Amazon. I will not use Shein or whatever you say. I will not use that. There's a lot of online. I think Target we're not allowed to use anymore. But what I do is I take the brand like Nine West. I shop Nine West online now. Mother Jeans, I shop online now. We just don't have the manpower to go to the malls anymore. And after the pandemic, it screwed all of us is that the size range is this big now. They don't, the stores are doing where their traffic is. Their traffic's online.
What do you mean by size range? Like
if I told my shopper, even on Young and the Restless, and this would be for low budget too, I need a 27 flare jeans, like this brand called Mother or Aeropostale, whatever. If you go in the store, they're going to be like, we have a 4 and a 10. I'm like, cool. So I just wasted my gas and my time when I can go online and put a size 27 in the cart. And Revolve is a huge, huge online resource that millions of brands come to, high end, low end, and you get it next day. Returns accepted for 30 days. So it's like, we're to blame, but they're to blame. After it all was reset after the pandemic, which is so sad. But to get what I need, I would wake up in the morning, go to set, and by the time I came home, there was a box of clothes that I needed.
Yeah, and there's almost basically a direct line from shrinking the crew size in your department to the death of retail, right? Like you don't have that extra body to send to the mall for the entire day to send you pictures or buy things. And then on top of that, it's this sort of death spiral in a way because everybody's shopping online, that the stores aren't carrying the sizes that you need in the first place. So there's no reason to go to the mall and collect a rack of clothes to bring back.
I want
Even
to.
if you
part
wanted
of me wants to. That's the thing is part of me wants to. I'm right next to the Grove, literally, Young and the Restless. But my assistant, Nikki, and she even knows more. She's like, they'll never have a size 7. They'll never have a size 8. I'm like, what? If I go there right now, they won't have it? And she's like, no, it's gone. They get one round. They used to have stacks of 7 shoes, stacks of 8. And now because the pandemic, they put it right online because the second they know if someone goes in the store and they don't find it, they're just going to go right to their phone and buy it anyways. It's a vicious, ugly cycle. And it takes here's the flip side. That's even worse is that I'll order a dress online. It'll come and I open the package. I'm like, this is crap. This is crap. I don't get to touch it anymore. I don't get to try it on anymore. Even for myself, I had to get shoes this morning because I don't have time to go to the store. But I know 50% of those shoes are going to be crap.
Yeah, because when you don't have that choice or that ability to sample or whatever it is, you can only buy on price. That's your decision has to be what's the cheapest and fastest way for it to get here because there's no other comparable. I'm not going to support the local people. Because they're not going to have it anyway. So it's that trade-off of efficiency.
That's why when you can, it's like the products that not that this is what your podcast is about, is like try to buy as local as much as you can of the non-revolving things. It's like, oh, this is the face cream I know. This is the hand cream. This is my whatever it is. Those are the things that will help small business sustain. And I can go on record for saying this. I think at some point, most of retail is going to close, but Walmart. Walmart it's sad to say they carry everything you could ever imagine. In New Jersey, the Walmart is 10 times the size of a Walmart I've ever seen. And no matter what we needed on that movie out there, Walmart had, except for organic food. Organic food, no way.
Yeah, but also returnable, right? And like
That's it.
often even without the receipt, they'll just take it back.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, the jeans, and that's how I know that families are sustaining. If I needed, like, we had this whole scene where they were like Hispanic gangsters, Italian gangsters, redneck gangsters. I went to Walmart. I got tracksuits for the Italians. For the rednecks, they had Dickies. Oh my God, I friggin' killed it. And for the Hispanics, they had flannels and Dickies. And so I did almost 150 background at Walmart alone. And the biggest price point I think was maybe $26. So that's the thing. The low budget is bringing creativity, amazing cast, and it's bringing heart. But I think for a lot of departments, it's bringing the quick, fast. I don't want to say fast fashion because that's not what I do, but it is bringing a lot of, there are people out there buying from these horrible companies because they're under the gun.
Yeah. Yeah. You have $100. I don't care if you bought it from.
They don't care.
I don't care where you get it from. If you can get it cheaper from one place, that's where you get it.
Well, you know what they did? I don't know if you guys know this, but Sony, I believe it's Sony, they got rid of their whole props department, the archives, because they would rather have the prop department, the art department, rebuild it to look like Titanic, to look like the Old West, than to use the real thing anymore, because how much it would cost to ship to Vancouver or wherever it was. It was pretty crazy.
Right. Oh, yeah.
They got rid of all the real stuff because they know that they can recreate it for cheaper and not have to ship it. And then at the end, they just trash it. So hopefully we can learn to recycle it all. But it is this whole, it's bringing out the best and the worst of the business, I think.
Okay, so we're nearing the end here, and you've given us like so much great information, and we don't want to take up all of your time. But like as we wrap up here, do you have any advice for a costume designer that's just starting out doing indies? Anybody just interested, maybe just on the fence about even entering the film industry? Yeah.
If you could do something else, do it. And I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We used to say back in the day, if you can do hair and makeup, do it. But at the same point, the playing field's getting so evened out. Here's what and this is what I've actually re-said to myself. If you can only think about fashion and creating, this is all that you and you guys can speak to this as doing what you do. If this is all that your being gets happy doing and thriving doing, you have to stay humble in taking that lower budget job, pulling stuff out of, nowhere, and not being able to do the high end thing you just worked on. And I really think the humility of it all is so important. It's not to get walked on. It's not to have people talk over you. It's not to become invisible, but this humility is what I've learned over 27 years of. There was a point in me in my late 20s where I was like, no, I know best, and that's it. And now it's truly getting into wherever that is where you land, and where you land, staying humble. And part of the process is we're just reminding yourself is you signed up for this. There's a reason you're here. You're here to listen and collaborate and stay humble, because I think it takes you so far at the end of the day. Well, I used to do this. And I have a lot of people coming in saying, well, I've designed theater and I've designed this. And I always say this, I'm very happy for you. I don't care what you've done before, because you're here right now. What can you do for me right now? Can you use a needle and thread? Can you come to set on time? Can you clock in when you're supposed to? Can you ask me when you're done? Is there anything else? How can you be of service of where you are right now? And I think that all comes down to humility, and, take that as it connects to you personally, but humility can mean a lot and can go very far for that individual. And, Ken and I came off of one of the biggest shows on TV, and all of a sudden you've got the pandemic and the writer's strike. And, we both had to be humble in the jobs that we were up for, and the jobs, I can speak to that I didn't get. So if anything, yes, keep trying, say yes to everything. But at the end of the day, if you can just remember to stay grounded, you'd be surprised on how many people around you remember that.
Well, it's also like whatever job you agree to, do that job at 110% of what you can do, and do that job really well. And the great thing
Hmm.
with the film industry is that all jobs end. Like they all have
I don't know about my
indie feature.
job. I don't know about
Well,
my
no,
job.
your job won't end, but that's the thing. Unless you work in soaps, so go work in soaps is the big advice, because that's if you want longevity in a career. But in every indie
I,
film project ends, so you can
yeah,
do
yeah,
you can do a really good job for 5 to
yeah.
6 weeks and do the best you can, and then if you didn't like it or if it wasn't for you, you just if that particular part of the job wasn't something that worked for you, you still did your best job,
Right,
and you
right.
never know what the next one's going to take.
And you make connections. I mean, who would have thought the girl crying over how to not use computer would have met the guy that she thought was only computer minded? Who would have thought that she would have met? I'm speaking about Ken, one
Hmm.
of the coolest guys who we fight like a married couple. We go to each other for advice. We look up to each other. And who would have thought that on this movie in a freezing cold city that I had never been in, that from that job, I got to take someone that I can look up to as an expert now, that I get to work for. And
Work
it's
with, let's say work with.
work with, cut to, I record, you listen to what I say. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Never. He's never like that. Never like that. That I get to work with. And that's the other thing about staying humble is like you're saying, the job ends, but you never know who you connected with on that job because you were just your real self. I think that says so much. You're totally right.
Well, and it is a relationship business. I mean, every business is, but really the film industry, like, Mandy, when's the last time you had to really pull out your resume, right? Like people know who you are, people like working with
Yeah.
you,
Thank
and
you.
9 times out of 10, it's going to be word of mouth that gets anybody a job here,
It is.
right?
It is. It's like I always say that people would rather hire the person that they know and liked versus someone over here that maybe they were really, really awesome, but I want to give them a chance. Like, make sure people like you. Not
Yeah.
everyone has to
Mhm.
love you, but make sure you're easy to work with too.
Well, make it easy for them to work with you. Like we don't have
Oh,
to go
yeah.
for a beer afterwards, right?
Right. That's a
Yeah.
good point. Yes. You
Yeah.
don't always have to date them. Okay. Got to remember that. I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
right.
sorry. We're back
No,
into
that's in fact you probably shouldn't. But it's very much a business where like I would much rather pick and work with the people who might not have the resume yet, but they
Mm-hmm.
definitely have the attitude, and they come and they do their best. And when they don't know something, they take it upon themselves to go and learn it.
Yep. I don't know is not an answer, people. I don't know is not an answer.
On that note,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Mandy. That was so great.
Oh my
Thank you so
God.
much for your time. It's lovely
So
meeting you.
fun. I wanted to point out one thing, Ken. I think it's really funny that you had to create an awesome podcast for us to catch up. Just noted here.
All right, so that was an incredible chat with Mandy. I just love her energy. Mandy's one of my favorite people on the planet. I've known her for so long, and it's always a delight to talk to her. And, the funny thing about having friends in this industry is that, like, we're social and we'll hang out sometimes and you get to know people, but then you don't really get to see them in their environment and like how good and talented they are at what they do sometimes, right? And I've worked with Mandy, and so I've seen her firsthand, but again, just getting to talk to her again and hear these stories, it's always a delight. So I'm so glad that Mandy decided to come hang out with us for a little bit.
I mean, from a purely just fact standpoint, just the pace of working on soap operas was just so fascinating. And
Yeah.
of course, we all know that there's a soap opera every day, there's a new episode, but it never really clicked to me that that meant you have to shoot so much every single day. So, between whatever 70 to 90 pages of script every single day. And for context, I mean, even in the MOW world, we're lucky if we're getting 8 to 10 completed every day. And just the idea of having to track 90 pages of storytelling every single day, like that was just an amazing. It's just amazing to also see like it's the same medium, but the processes are so different.
Yeah, I still I feel like I have to go and see it with my own eyes because she's explained it to me multiple times and I still don't understand how it's humanly possible, even for the actors, to memorize so much every single night. One thing that I thought was interesting though, she mentioned that the way that they write soap operas, they write it so that it's easier for the actors to memorize, right? So rather than a traditional like say Aaron Sorkin or John Wells, scene where you're bantering back and forth with quick dialogue and short sentences. A soap opera is written very much in a way of like, so what happened? And then there's like half a page of the actor explaining what happened. And it's just written in a way that there isn't the back and forth. So you don't have to remember timing so much, but you just have like these prompts. And then one actor gets to talk for a while, and then the other actor gets to talk for a while. And I thought that was a very interesting.
Yeah, they sort of narrate back the story to you a bit, and then.
Yeah, it's not really a conversation. Exactly. It's just a bunch of exposition told in kind of an interesting way and over again. Right. And because it's like if you miss Tuesday's episode and Wednesday's episode, well, if you watch Thursday's episode, you can't be completely in the dark, right? So they have to constantly be repeating the information. But I love the story of how one of the leads of the show came out and the wardrobe wasn't really working with her and they didn't know what to do. And, they were about to spend so much time potentially trying to solve this problem. And Mandi just saw like her robe belt essentially and like cut that and wrapped it around her and sewed it to the actress, and it all worked out so quickly. And like that's the Mandi Line that I know. She's so resourceful.
And it's such a fascinating thing with the costumes department in general. I find that their ability to improvise and to adapt and work so fast to come up with solutions on the fly, because there always is a need for solution. Like just, we need to add a shawl or add a coat or add something, and just being able to just find something in their bag of tricks and go, what about this? And throw something on, and all of a sudden, and that becomes just a character part for the entire length of the show or movie. But it all happens because there's some level of adaptation and creative problem solving in the moment.
And just from a storytelling perspective, it is just such an important piece of character development, right? It's the most efficient way to establish a character on screen outside of dialogue. Somebody saying like, hey, that guy's a really bad guy. Well, like, okay, fine. We understand that they're a bad person. But yeah. And then on top of that, like, think of just some iconic pieces of wardrobe that are out there, from Dorothy's red slippers to, John McClane's, white tank top that basically is black by the end of Die Hard. And wardrobe is just such an integral part of the storytelling process that, yeah, it's something that I never really thought about before I became a professional writer, where I was like, I don't know anything about clothes. Like, who cares? It's just trying to make the actors look pretty. But no, it does so much heavy lifting.
It really does. And it really comes back to that idea of like, if you truly believe that movie making or this medium is a show don't tell medium, this is the first way to show don't tell. When that character walks in the room, what they're wearing tells you almost everything you need to know about that person in 10 seconds. Like if they're wearing a tuxedo walking into the room, and that what you're getting,
Yeah.
or what they represent, and or a high-end suit, or they're wearing cut jeans or something like that. So
And even playing with color and like variations on that character's theme. Like I just worked on a TV show where the star of the show was always in some sort of version of blue. Like that was his color. And then the other character was always in a version of red. And so on screen, you just knew exactly who was who at any given point. And it was fun for the designer to also play around within those colors and, and styles to, well, maybe now they're wearing swim trunks, but in the next scene, they actually have to go to a formal event, but it's still within the colors of those characters. And that's also a really interesting thing to play with. There's so much you can do. And again, we're just scratching the surface here, but Mandi is just so talented. She's clearly worked on so many things, from music videos to film to TV, and like all budget levels of it, right? So just starting in indie, having that resource, that foundation built for her, and then being able to apply that to big budget productions as well as soap operas. Yeah, it's just amazing to hear.
Yeah, it's fun to talk to someone who's sort of at the top of their craft. Like just to be at the top of your craft, and to have that experience of all the layers underneath it that led up to that, because now you see the journey. You see what this leads to. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, one of my biggest takeaways, like from just the idea that we're talking to a department head rather than to another director or a writer or a producer, right? Like there's so much more that goes into indie filmmaking than just the script or the direction or, putting a crew together. It's who's on your crew. right?
Yeah.
Who are your department heads? Well, here's a wardrobe or a costume designer. And we're going to be talking to more department heads too, which is very exciting. All right, so that's it for this week's episode of Off the Lot. We want to hear from you. If there are any topics you want covered or any questions you would like answered, please email us at podcast.offthelot@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd. Our handles are in the show notes. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. We'll see you next week. See you, Anthony.
See you next week, Ken.